So, those of you that do not know David Baldwin, let me tell you, you are absolutely missing out. I had not known him until earlier this year, and it turns out he is a gem in our area here in Raleigh. And I've learned so much from him, just getting to know him and actually reading his book since I got to know him, which we're going to talk about here in just a minute. But I met David through Inman Connect, where he presented a really compelling presentation, in my opinion, about kind of leading with heart and following causes you believe in, and how to do that as a brand, not just as an individual. So, David, I'm not going to introduce you other than to welcome you and thank you so much for coming. But tell us a little bit about what you do on a daily basis and kind of your theory behind how you run your brands.
Sure. So I have a little bit of an interesting thing in that I have an advertising and design company called Baldwin in Raleigh. And I also have a brewery in Durham. And one of the things that we always said when we started our agency 10 years ago was that we were going to create our own brands and create our own luck. And if you think about the advertising business, we spend a lot of our time working for clients. And we thought, well, we should also put that expertise to work for ourselves as well. And so we've incubated a number of brands for clients like Seventh Generation and Burt's Bees and some pretty big brands. But we've also done some of our own. And one of the ones that has grown the fastest and has been the biggest is a brewery in Durham called Ponysaurus Brewing. And, one of the advantages that I think I have as an entrepreneur and somebody starting a business is that I do understand the principles of branding and how to create a narrative before beer hit the bottle. Like, we knew the conversations that we needed to be having, and we knew how to structure a conversation about what the belief system of the company would be, which is, I think, the core of the book that I wrote, which is called The Belief Economy. And the idea really is that we're human beings and we're motivated by beliefs, and we want to be part of something bigger than ourselves. There was an article in the Harvard Business Review a few months ago that said 9 out of 10 people would choose to make less money over the term of their career if they could just be part of meaningful work, doing meaningful work. So we had the advantage of starting an advertising agency around those principles 10 years ago, and we had the advantage of doing that with the brewery as well. And so when we started the brewery, my founders and I sat around and said, what do we want this to be? What do we want to do? And we decided that we didn't want to just make beer. We wanted to build community.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the impact, we talk a lot about impact and what's the impact that we want to have. We want to create a culture of acceptance and empathy in the world. And so and it's central to what you do with beer. You drink beer, you sit with friends, you talk, you meet people. It's not like some wonky, weird thing. It's actually a core tenet of what it means to sit and have a beer with friends. And so we thought, what if we could actually scale that?
Yeah. And I love what you talk about, that your point of you knew what you wanted to do as the brand and what you guys stood for before beer even hit the bottle. Because I think so often when it comes to branding, we look at the daily activities that we're doing and we try and incorporate that in our branding. And I actually think that's almost misguided, because your brand is so much more than what you're doing. It's what you stand for. It's the things you're not doing as well. And so I love that point of kind of defining who you are and what you want to be able to do before you even are doing it.
Yeah. And you kind of think like, well, that's a real advantage because you started up, you can do that. But you can actually do that at any stage of development as a company. One of the things we say, the word brand is a verb. It's a set, it's not a noun. It's actually a set of behaviors that are aligned around a belief system. And if you're not aligned around your belief system, your employees know it, your customers know it. And in a day where Paul Pullman, the former CEO of Unilever, said, if Twitter can bring down a country in 18 days, it can bring down a brand in 18 minutes,
Absolutely.
And so, right. So we're living in a world of transparency right now, where if your company is up to no good, it will be found out pretty fast. And it might even be your employees, by the way, who out you. So on the on the good side of that, there have been a ton of studies that say, if you want to you can increase your revenue from 60, or your market valuation from 60 to 80%. You can reduce your staff turnover by 50%. You can raise your revenue by up to 20% just by creating a culture around belief system, and just by creating. Some people might roll their eyes at this, but it's like by creating a meaningful culture that's on a mission, you can actually do all of those things. It makes your company worth more. So what if you could increase your margin by 6 to 20%? Like, wouldn't you want to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So your book talks about it a little, and I think that it's such an interesting point, because I sort of have grown up, not necessarily in this generation, but just the previous one. And I feel like as a self-described millennial, although I've never lived in my parents' basement, is we've kind of shifted how people want to be marketed to and want to be communicated to. And what I found so fascinating is, I think, and I believe you think, that this really creates a huge opportunity for businesses. I mean, if you talk to my dad, who's a baby boomer, he laughs all the time when we talk about companies like this, because he always says to me, when I was in the kind of prime of the workforce, nobody gave a shit if you were enjoying the work you're doing. Like, that was recreation. The work wasn't meant to be enjoyed, it was work. And so I think we've shifted not only that marketing and communication kind of trend, but also what people expect at work and how to feel about, the things that you're doing. So talk to me about this big opportunity that you see.
Sure. Well, there's a lot of studies to back this up, but there is an emerging, I think, cultural thing that I make the point in the book. I'm not sure if it's zeitgeist of the age, or if it's, I make the case in the book that I think it started with millennials. Millennials now are almost 40 years old, so it's not like they're in the workforce, they're running companies, they're the management now. But I do think it started with millennials in the way that the 60s sort of revolution happened with the hippies and Enlightenment. That said, it is way beyond millennials. It's everybody. We're at a point now where, I look back at the book, which I wrote, it came out a year and a half ago, which means I wrote it over the last 4 years, and things have changed. There's been a quickening of all of this stuff, and it's even more important now. So the opportunity is actually to create use your work that you do as a company to create shared value. And shared value is an idea that was espoused by a guy named Michael Porter up at Harvard. Again, there's a really great TED Talk on shared value if you want to go watch it. It's pretty inspiring. But the idea is that businesses solve problems. That's what businesses do. It might be how your breath smells, right? But all businesses have to solve a problem, or they don't, or they can't be in business. But the point is, can you actually create a business that solves a problem and makes things a little bit better in the world? And if you can actually, businesses now, that's what they do is scale their solutions to succeed. So if all businesses were in that game of creating, and he calls that shared value. So everybody wins. The company makes money, the people get their problems solved, the world gets a little bit better. And it's also known as conscious capitalism, as well as another great book about conscious capitalism. But that's something that always fascinated me, because I sell things for a living. I'm a capitalist. I'm a capitalist for a living. That's what I do.
Aren't we all?
But right. Well, that's the system this is the profession we have chosen. But the point really is that people want you now to do no harm. And in fact, I think they want you to take a stand. And so, and it is fraught with peril sometimes too, if you do it wrong. And I think what we talk about a lot as a company, as Baldwin, and I think we've proven out with Ponysaurus every day, is it can't be BS. It has to be real. And so every company has a set of, 4 words of their values, that usually integrity and honesty and straight talk, or, whatever it is.
Yeah, it's like all stuff that actually doesn't really, it's buzzwords in a lot of ways.
Yeah, or they ignore it. You know,
Yeah.
it sort of lives in a PowerPoint somewhere up in a, that gets trotted out when there's an annual report.
Yeah.
And what we would say is your employees actually are paying way more attention to that than you might be as a manager or as an owner. And you need to understand that. And the opportunity is, how can you take those words or turn them into real statements? I think buzzwords is a really great point of it. They're just buzzwords, then you've got some work to do. But you can take those and create alignment and behavior around all of those things and actually live that in the world. One way to look at it would be to, instead of thinking of cause marketing, think of your business as a cause. And what's the cause that you're trying to do? It might be making money. It's fine. Like if you're a financial services company, it might be all about making money, and that's fine. But how can you enroll your people into that cause and actually start to do some good things? BlackRock Financial came out last year and said every fund that we invest in is going to have a sustainability. It's going to have to be about sustainability, or we're not going to do it. Yeah. And I think even the most hardened, even the sort of most hardened person who thinks this is BS has children that need to inherit a world, right? So we all need to leave the world a little better than we found it, and I think we're living in the first generation where that may not be the case. So I do think we're pushing back on that and trying to do our best.
Yeah,
so,
and
but
go ahead. I was gonna say.
Well, I think.
Sorry, in real estate too, you guys, if you're sort of struggling to define what this looks like, there's now also companies that help you do this. So for instance, in real estate, there's a company called Give Back Homes. Caroline Pinal owns it. And it is designed to help you have that cause and have that vehicle for how do I get from A to Z to actually help people. Because it can sometimes be a big undertaking to figure out, okay, I know I want to make this difference, but how do I actually make the difference? So if that seems a little bit overwhelming to you, there's tons of companies out there now that help you go about your daily work and still make that impact. So go ahead, David. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, not at all. I think that segued into a better point. So I think the important thing is to look at it as a journey. It's not a magic wand. And one of the great things is to enroll your people into actually making that happen. What I was going to say first, and I think it will feed into two stories I want to tell you, is really find a niche around that's congruent to what you do. And I'll make two. There's Nike doing the Colin Kaepernick stuff. They've sold $6 billion worth of merchandise since that thing happened. Even though at the time some people got really incensed and were burning shoes and things like that, it actually has been fantastic for their business. Whereas then you had Gillette do their thing about toxic masculinity. Sales are flat and people were mad at them. And if you watch their advertising now, it seems like they've gone back to the best a man can get. So that turned out to be what seems like a marketing ploy. Mm-hmm. And people sniff that out really fast. So what we're talking about is fundamental change in behavior that can lead you to have a ton more success. But now going back to niches, find the thing that you're good at that actually, if there's a Venn diagram between sort of the difference you're making in the world, the impact you're making in the world, and your company, make that your thing. So I know if I was in real estate, I would find, if you said, David, you're a real estate agent tomorrow, the first thing I would do is look into the market and figure out, like, what are the things that I believe? What are the values that I have? And now how do I bring that to the real estate industry? And I know for me, I would try to help veterans find homes. Mm-hmm. I would be all about, I'm going to be the first home guy. That's all I'm interested in, is selling you your first home and making sure it's the right home. That's how I would approach it. And then from there, as you grow your customer base and you're all about that, I would build all kinds of behavior around finding people their first home. I would create blog posts about that. I would create content about that. I would actually be out in the market finding ways to engage people looking for their first homes. I would actually be looking for opportunities to help people that don't think they can get a home to realize that they can get a home. I would do all sorts of stuff around that and then go from there. Now, maybe in 5 years, maybe you've grown far beyond that.
Yeah.
But there's an opportunity. We always say in advertising, the essence of positioning is sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
It's sacrificing what you're not to be what you are. But what happens is when you do that, when you narrow your focus, you actually open the world.
Yeah.
You don't close the world. You open the world and you open opportunity.
Yeah, I think that's so important when you talk about those kind of niches in real estate. Is you don't have to really like think super hard about what could I possibly do. A lot of the time, my good friend Stephanie Lanier always talks about creating the things that you wish existed. And my philosophy is there's other people out there like you that have struggled with certain elements of perhaps buying a home, finding a home, things like that. Go toward those people. Speak to the people that are already listening to you and that you have some sort of authority with. Our good friend Mary Maloney out in San Diego, she's a past veteran herself. She comes from a family of veterans, and she's created a branch of her brokerage that solely helps veterans and solely hires veterans. In that way, just as you said, it becomes so much more than a marketing campaign. It's behaviors. It's people coming to you because they understand that not only do you care about what they're going through, but you understand what they're going through and you want to help them. So I think that's really fascinating. So David and I have kind of skirted around it because I know the story, but I'm going to have him tell you all the story. So those of you that are not local to North Carolina or Raleigh, you may have heard about HB2, which came to Raleigh 3 years ago now?
3 years ago, yeah.
And it's commonly around North Carolina, and I believe in the national news was referred to as the bathroom bill, and it was really, really controversial. And it incited some very strong feelings, I believe, both ways in North Carolina and around North Carolina. It did a lot, in my opinion, to really harm industry and business in North Carolina. It's actually not my opinion. The data shows it did a lot to harm industry and business in North Carolina and cost our state, I believe, billions of dollars. So, David, when it came to North Carolina, you took a really strong stance and perhaps some might say a controversial stance. So tell us that story, because I think that's a really powerful thing for people to hear, to kind of picture, how do I put this into action?
Sure, absolutely. By the way, it's going to cost our state $3.6 billion by 2024. So we're still dealing with it. It's been an absolute nightmare. Mm-hmm. I think some of us are working to make it better and overturn it and all those things. And the governor has been trying as well and has done some really good things in there. But here's I'm going to put it in terms of opportunity, actually, because when we started this brewery and we decided we were going to be about community and promoting acceptance and empathy, we had no idea this was coming, right? We didn't know. Yeah. We just thought that's what we want to bring to this world. And so, and use beer to do it. So, we have on any given day at our brewery, we have all sorts of, every night there's something happening that brings somebody from the community in to do something. It could be a running club. It could be, we support local entrepreneurs. We'll do co-branded things with them just to help them, to give them a showcase. We're just constantly doing things. And, during the holidays, we have this thing called the Holiday Spirit Measurer thingy. And it's like an old, looks like a steampunk dial, and it measures Twitter sentiment. And so what we do is we ask people to tweet positive, tweet jolly thoughts during the holidays. And if the Twitter sentiment in Durham goes up over a certain index, over 65%, we unlock a tap. We have this little mechanism that unlocks a tap, and everybody gets a free holiday beer and a small taster. I love that. So just things like that, like really fun things. Well, HB2 happened, and we got really mad, and I in particular got really mad, and I immediately marched over to one of my art directors and I said, "Here's what I want. I want a post, and I want our Ponysaurus flipping the bird." And I wrote some post about like the troglodytes and our some hateful thing. And hit posted it and felt all smug and good. one of my partners called me, Nick, and said, like, what are you doing? What's that? You know, that's not how we should respond to this. We don't respond to hate with hate. And so I went back and started saying, all right, the opportunity here is actually to engage the community in the conversation. Mm-hmm. That's the opportunity here. And if we really believe this, there's a train going by. Can you hear the train?
A little bit, but not too loud. Okay,
good. It's incredibly loud in this room. And we thought we can engage the community, and this is actually what we do. And so what we did was our brewmaster at the time partnered, talked to another brewmaster at another brewery called Mystery, and said, what if we actually make a collaboration beer? And we thought that's actually pretty cool, and we'll take that beer and we'll use it to raise funds for LGBTQ causes, including a camp called Chords, QORDS, which is a really cool thing. It's for trans kids to go and actually be with other trans kids and be normal, and you know, all this wonderful stuff. And what ended up happening is we started to engage the community in it. We branded it "Don't Be Mean to People," which is a golden rule ale, and "Don't Be Mean to People" is the ultimate golden rule, right? So it's the golden rule. So we ended up getting 42 other breweries got involved, donated time and talent and treasure and distribution and ingredients and all sorts of things. And you can still buy this beer to this day. It's actually our third biggest seller at the brewery. It's turned into a festival. We've had a festival the last 2 falls to raise money for, again, LGBTQ, but also for the ACLU of North Carolina. And we're just doing our part, but what we're actually trying to do is inject love and hopefulness and positivity into the conversation, and also to tell the country that North Carolina is not HB2. There's a lot of business here that actually doesn't agree with that, and because again, from a business standpoint, it's been disastrous for this state.
Absolutely.
And so at the same time, we got death threats. The KKK called and threatened to burn us down. Which was amazing. And whoever took the call deleted the voicemail. They were a little bit freaked out. And I was like, oh, we could have used that.
Yeah, that would have been a great thing to have.
Yeah, it would have been great social content. No, I would actually have loved to use it to actually make the point, the jujitsu, that this is not how you behave. But the other thing is, we became national news. We were everything from, you've done something when you're on Fox News and Huffington Post at the same time. And it became national news. It was on lots of broadcast channels around the country. It was on the actual national broadcast news. It was on blogs everywhere. Awesome. And it's the best brand awareness thing we've ever done, and it's not advertising. It's behavior. It's proof of principle that if you take a stand, you can actually, millions of dollars worth of exposure and advertising. But it also was us living our values. It wasn't BS. This was a real thing, and we did take our. We intuitively knew that it was going to be good for us. So because I've seen it over and over again. It's an opportunity. But it's an opportunity that everybody can use. And I'm not saying you even have to be controversial. I'm saying you have to come from your heart, right? And if you come from your heart and you lead from there, and your brand is aligned with that, you really can't lose. At the same time, the brewery grew 33% last year. We're growing like crazy, and it has not hurt us. Anybody who would have been nervous about that, which none of us were, might have said, "Oh, I don't know why you're doing that. You're going to get in trouble." Get in trouble. We're growing like crazy, and that beer also gets us into all kinds of doors. I mean, people love that they see the beer and they're like, "What is that? That's neat," And so it's been a win-win-win all the way around.
Well, and so I want to touch on 2 things that you said. First, obviously, it's a win-win all the way around in my eyes, but the potential loss that you face when you take a stand like this is normally loss. Not only that you can shoulder that burden, but that you're probably better off taking. Because what you're getting in return is you're attracting what I call the right people, the people who will see your value, will like your brand, will talk to people about your brand. Your brand's going to continue to resonate with them. And if you're not continuously attracting those right people, then that's when taking a stance can sometimes cause negative impacts because you don't really have a defined target audience.
Right. Right.
So I think that's important. The other thing that he said early on in the story that I think is so important, I don't want to gloss over, is how lucky you are to have people like Nick around you. And I'm sure you will
for sure
this for Nick so that he can hear that. But but
and Kyle at the time too. Yeah,
absolutely. And it's so important, not only because in this situation it worked out for the best, but because you have to have people that don't just nod their head and agree with your sentiment at all times. It do for you like it did for me, it pissed you off. And when things piss us off and when controversial things happen or when things challenge our core beliefs, the natural human reaction is to kind of be a little bit brash, and having people around us that will kind of help us push the pause button, help put us in check in some ways, and say, is that how we want to handle that? You need people that will challenge your values and uphold your values when things challenge your values.
Yeah, very true.
Super, super important. So you talked about some of the positive impacts that your brand has seen as a result of this. I'm curious, if somebody were, you say it doesn't have to be a controversial thing, it's much more about behavior. What are do you have some examples that you can think of that you mentioned Gillette, but some that have really kind of missed the mark in terms of these sorts of things?
Sure. Yeah, I think the poster girl would be Pepsi with Kendall Jenner, where I really believe, we were a Pepsi roster agency forever, and we used to go up there all the time, and they meant that commercial. That commercial did not come from a bad place. If you walk around their headquarters, like it lives in the building. They're very inclusive, very diverse, really, really great company that way. But at the same time, the way they did it was so disingenuous and so weird. And so, I think Kendall Jenner sort of representing a peace movement is incredibly misguided and incredible, right? So incredibly incredible. And they got killed for it. And they just absolutely got killed for it. So, I mean, I think that's probably the biggest one. And then you've got, again, Nike is a great example of a company that does it really well, but has some problems on the back end that they're trying to fix. What I admire about Nike is they're fairly transparent with what they're wrestling with and trying to be. And one of the reasons I do want to make this thing, you will read a lot about purpose marketing. And I think purpose marketing is fantastic when it's aligned and real. The problem is that when it's marketing, when it's just the marketing department or just marketing, it actually can really hurt you. Yeah. And so we like to talk about impact instead of purpose. Now, knowing your purpose is fantastic. You have to know that, and you should have that as a company. But going beyond it and creating inauthentic communications around that will just kill you. So we like to talk about impact because I think there's a lot more forgiveness in impact. And I think impact is what is the impact we're trying to have as a company and a brand on the world and in our customers' lives. And that's a much more productive conversation, I think, than purpose. Now, purpose becomes a really great tool to get there. But everybody references like a company like Patagonia they put their money where their mouth is. They really do it right. Or Ben & Jerry's really does it right. A lot of Unilever brands are doing a really great job of it. And Unilever has taken steps to change what a Fortune 500 company looks like that sources, for packaged goods. So, and in fact, their belief-driven brands grow 50% faster than their non-belief-driven brands. So, the Doves of the world grow much faster and at much bigger scale than, I think they have like Marmite or, some of those other brands that don't have some kind of bigger thing to them. So I will say this, I do want to tell a story though, one more story, because I do think it is a journey. And I guarantee if someone's listening out there right now going, yeah, my company's 20 years old and I've got 30 people or 50 people or 100 people, whatever it is. And there's no way we can do this. And what I would tell those people is you need to look at it as a journey, and you need to look at it as a journey where you're changing the tire on a moving car, right? Yeah. You can't stop the car to do this. And so there's a lot of really great ways to do that. And we started working with Long John Silver's last year, which is fish and chips, right? And there's some really interesting stuff going on there because the brand has just been absent from culture. They had a 1% unaided brand awareness. Now, everybody kind of remembers them when you bring them up. They have a 98% aided brand awareness, but they're not on a consideration set. Nobody's thinking about them. Nobody's really remembered them.
Yeah.
And they've just languished. And so we started working with them last year, and they actually have an amazing sustainability story. So their sustainability story is their products are caught in a preserve that is a maintained preserve. It's filleted and flash frozen on the boat, and it's in a store a week and a half later.
Oh, wow.
So believe it or not, other seafood companies, what they do is they actually catch the fish, they ship them to China, they fillet them there, they freeze them, they send them back to America, and they're, it's a couple months long journey. Now, it was very tempting to go down that road for Long John Silver's, but you also have a group of people that were not feeling it in the company, weren't sure what the mission should be. Very, very dedicated people, but they're like, what are we about, And so we actually counseled them not to go sustainable yet. That's a journey that they're going to have to go on. I think if they had come out last year with we're a sustainable fishing company, they would have been killed. I think they would have gotten killed, and I think it would not have motivated people to go, I'm going to go try it. So what we did is we said, we're going to actually go on this journey together. And we actually created this. We have a new campaign that launched in the spring called Fish Yeah is the new tagline. And it's just this obsession with seafood and all things sea. And it's really fun. And we created a campaign of musical coupons where we started a record label and really started releasing songs through Lent. Lent is one of their most important periods of the year because people eat fish. And you could bring the songs in and play them. You show the songs in store and and it became a coupon. And sales went up 8% after a 3-year slide, And I think what's important there is that we're having all the right conversations. The people internally are really engaged and excited about that work and about what's happening and maybe most importantly, momentum.
Yeah.
And if you get on Long John Silver's Twitter account right now, which is what we do and what we use, their profile says, yes, we still exist. And it's just having fun and being very self-aware about what we are and who we are. And now we're on a journey with that organization to build their building blocks that we've started. And we created we have this really interesting framework, which I should say, I'm happy to share with anybody if they would like to send me an email. Maybe we can get my email at the end of the thing and I'll share the framework. And I will also say my book is called The Belief Economy. And it's called How to Give a Damn, Stop Selling and Create Buy-in. And the reason to buy the book, sure, I like the book. It's a good book.
It's a good book. I actually read it this past month. I felt like I should. It was like my duty to read it.
Thank you.
But it was a fantastic read. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Well, I think what's actually, I think hardworking about it is I didn't want it to not be actionable. And as a company, we always say strategy without action is nothing. It's just a dream, right? So everything needs to be actionable. So I put a bunch of strategic exercises at the end of that book, and I think it makes it worth the price of admission. That said, if anybody doesn't want to buy the book, send me an email. Should I just say my email?
Yeah, sure.
And my email is dbaldwin, DBALDWIN @baldwinand.com, and is spelled A-N-D, so BALDWINAND.com. And I'll PDF you the exercises. I'll just send you
Awesome.
I'm happy to send you those exercises, and you can use those in your own company.
Yeah,
and hopefully be helpful.
Resources section too for you guys to download. So that would be amazing. So let me ask you this, because you make a really interesting point with the Long John Silver's example. Is you talked about they're really engaged internally, and my philosophy, and I'm not an ad person like you are, but my philosophy is sometimes when these big companies, and I use the big companies as an example, but it applies to your everyday real estate agent that's, paying a marketing person to run their social media too. Oftentimes when you see these misses, it's because they're not as engaged internally, or because whoever they hire, in my eyes, didn't do the proper discovery process to really understand the brand, the values, the voice, who you are, what you stand for. And so I think I just want to make that point, because I think, we're all spread thin in how many things we can do in any given day. And oftentimes the first spend that I see real estate agents make is, let me hire somebody, they can just post for me on social media. And those posts, like, it's just as good to not post as it is to have, it's actually probably better to not post as frequently than it is to have something that is not consistent with your brand and your voice and your message. And so I think that that's something that with your work, I've seen you guys do, and is something so important. Would you say that is spot on, or is that something that you think, you can farm this stuff out?
I think yes and no. I think, again, fundamentally knowing who you are and having your values, being aligned around your values, is where you start. And when you start that, actually what it turns into is a hiring filter, and it turns into an advertising filter and a brand filter, and it starts to make it a lot easier to make strategic decisions about what you will and won't do, and up with what you will not put, as we like to say. And it helps you figure all that out, so that if you are insourcing or outsourcing, it doesn't matter, because people know what they're joining and what part, what they're a part of. Yeah. That's what we believe is really important. And so even as an ad agency, we do a lot of internal advertising, marketing to the internal people as much as we do campaigns out to consumers. So we think that's really important. And so we've done some work for Red Hat, for instance, which is a really cool software company in town here. Done a few things for them that it's all been internal. It's actually really great work, and really, if you look at it, it's really creative advertising. Yeah. But it's focused internally to get people excited about Red Hat and their mission. They've got a really cool mission. And so they're very smart to understand that, like, let's get people engaged in that all the time. So
awesome. Well, David, thank you so much. You're always such a joy to chat with. I could keep you all day, but I'm going to be respectful of yours and everyone else's time. As you guys heard earlier in the episode, David did share his email. I'll post that in the comments down below for you guys. And we'll get you those documents so that you can download them as resources, because I really do believe, these exercises that he offers are frankly central to being able to roll this out. I love your analogy of changing the tire on a moving vehicle. That's a good
right. What we all have to do.
Yes, thank you so much. And for all of our members, whether you guys are watching this on recording or live, we will be back live on June 3rd at 1 p.m. with social media expert Marky Lemons, who is well known for teaching all sorts of real estate agents about the upcoming trends and what they can do to hear their voices more and be more present and have their voice heard. So thank you again, David. Thank you. I will see you next month. Thanks.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.